Episode 11 of Andor is finally here, so let's get straight into it. We start off with Cassian and Melshi desperately hanging onto the side of a cliff hiding from an imperial ship. This right here is a TIE Reaper, an imperial ship designed as a troop carrier and first seen in Rogue One. The TIE Reaper here is clearly on patrol looking for the escaped prisoners, something which we also saw in the closing moments of the previous episode. And judging by the physical conditions of Cassian and Melshi, it seems like they have been hanging on for quite some time. We cut to Ferrix and we get some really sad news that Maarva has passed away. So there goes my theory on Maarva's secret plan. Brasso tries to comfort B, but it's a pretty sad situation all around. As the funeral procession takes Maarva's body away, we see Cinta watching from a distance, now having taken up a job at a nearby cantina, which coincidentally is also where attendant Corv is watching from. Really just an interesting situation all around, as two spies looking for the same objective having such a close interaction. And the whole scene really just reflects on how well respected Maarva was to the local community, a level of influence that might still have a role in the finale. But I must say that while the show has given us signs of Maarva's deteriorating health throughout the different episodes, it does feel like a bit of an anticlimactic end for a character like Maarva. On Narkina 5, Cassian and Melshi spot two aliens fishing nearby, as well as a quad jumper, a ship that also appeared in The Force Awakens when Rey and Finn were trying to escape Jakku, only for it to be blown up by the First Order, which led them to the Millennium Falcon. The two make a run for it, but end up in a sticky gooey trap. Attendant Corv makes a report to Dedra about Maarva's death. Learning about the upcoming funeral procession, Dedra wants to go ahead to set up a trap for Cassian in the event that he decides to return. We also get to learn about the Ferrix funeral custom, which supposedly cremates the deceased and mixes their ashes with mortar in order to make bricks out of it, perhaps symbolically preserving the person's contribution to the local community, setting their legacy in stone. We cut back to Cassian as the two fishermen walk up to both of them, and these two aliens are actually the natives of Narkina 5. We then learn that the two have a bit of a grudge against the Empire, as the prison has affected the local environment, making it harder to fish, and this probably has something to do with the hydroelectric power being used by the Empire. And if you take a look at the surroundings, there's a very good chance that since the Empire arrived, the water levels have dropped very rapidly. Which is why we see these steep cliff faces and arid environment, and this is a bit of a long-standing motif in Star Wars that depicts the Empire as a bit of an industrial machine consuming resources at the expense of the local nature. Lucky for Cassian and Melshi, the fishermen decide to let them go and decide to take them to Naimos at Cassian's request. On Coruscant, we see Clea cleaning up some coins, the ones that she keeps telling Luthen to clean.
You want to be useful? Go clean some coins.
Val pays a visit and Clea acts coy for a moment before dropping most pretenses due to Val's insistence. And if you notice that throughout the entire conversation, the two constantly move from one side of the shop to another, standing in front of different collection pieces to simulate a buyer and a shopkeeper, likely to keep up pretenses in the event that they are being watched. On Ferrix, Brasso tries to convince B to come with him, and B is somewhat reluctant, convincing him to let him stay for one more night. Bix, still under the custody of the Empire, seems to be completely broken as she is watched by a security camera, the very same type seen in A New Hope when Han and Luke are trying to break Princess Leia out. Bix is interrogated as to whether Anto Krieger is the person that she introduced Cassian to, and in a beautiful piece of acting, we can really just see how broken and exhausted she is. It's not certain as to what answer she gave, but it's very likely that she will simply decide to tell the truth. Mon Mothma watches her daughter basically decide to join a religious cult, much to the dismay of her own mother and Vel. Mothma shares her problem with Vel, and we learn that time is running out, which is now forcing Mothma to seriously consider the marriage proposal. Another example of the sacrifice Mon Mothma is being forced to make for the sake of the rebellion. Cyril is contacted by Sergeant Mosk and he learns about Maarva's death and the possibility of Cassian being there, setting up the final episode for everyone's paths to cross. Cassian retrieves his belonging on Naimos, the same stuff he hid back in episode 7, which includes the credits from Aldhani, his blasters, and Nemik's manifesto. Luthen makes another visit to Saw Gerrera, and this time he gets checked on the way in. Tubes explains that Saw is in that sort of mood, referring to his growing paranoia, a state of mind that Saw increasingly fell into towards the later years of his life. This constant state of paranoia is also what led him to suspect Jin upon meeting her many years later. Saw states that he is willing to fight with Anto Krieger, but Luthen tells him the truth. And we get to see Saw's paranoia grow even further once he realizes that Luthen is willing to sacrifice others to protect himself, something which forces Luthen to break him out of his state of mind by pointing a blaster at him. The two agree that burning Anto is for the greater good, and Luthen prepares to leave. As Luthen speaks to Clea, their communications get blocked by an Imperial patrol. Luthen tells his ship to create a new transponder with a preference for Alderaan. Alderaan is of course Leia's planet, and it's interesting that Luthen chose this particular planet. This might be due to the fact that Alderaan was a rather influential core world planet that was well respected within the Imperial Senate, a status that might cause the Imperials to at the very least hesitate while conducting the stop and check. The Imperials engaged the tractor beam to bring in his ship, but Luthen has other plans. Luthen tries to buy some time, and we also get to see a screen with a ton of Arbesh on it. The Arbesh that we see basically states the abbreviated name of the different parts of the ship and their respective status. On the top left we have port, normal, top right we have stabilizers, normal, in the middle we have big gun, armed, bottom right, sub-engine, normal, and finally on the bottom left, warning, port engine boost. Now what's also interesting is that we do get to see a few other panels, but as far as I can tell, these aren't written in Arbesh. And a cool little detail here is that all the additional weapons that Luthen's ship has seems to correspond with this unknown language, a small detail that lets us know that these parts don't belong on the original design of the ship. Luthen tries to get away, but the tractor beam holds on, and this is a particularly clever moment from Luthen as he tricks the Imperials into thinking that he is trying to pull away, which forces the Imperials to increase the strength of the tractor beam. Instead, he releases these tiny projectiles that end up flying towards the Imperials at faster speeds due to the pull exerted from the tractor beam. On top of that, as the projectiles use kinetic energy, these projectiles will pass through any shields the Imperials might have. A few TIE fighters and a TIE bomber head out, and we get a dogfight where Luthen's weapons completely outclasses the Imperials, allowing him to do some damage and jump to hyperspace. And while this does allow Luthen to escape safely, you can be sure that the Imperials will be looking for any Fondor Hallcrafts in the future. Cassian learns from the ticketer back on Ferrix that Maarva has passed. Andor and Melshi part ways, but not before Cassian hands him a gun. The two agreed that people have to know what happened on Narkina 5, and it's very likely that we will see Melshi again in Season 2 of Andor. After all, we do know that he makes it all the way to Rogue One. So that was the breakdown of episode 11 of Andor. A lot of this episode is dedicated to setting up the final event on Ferrix for the episode 12 finale. While not much in terms of Easter eggs or cameos, it's still a pretty fun episode with a lot of painful character moments. So that's all for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.